Hey there, Nation, and welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Cheapskate, and we are back with our very first episode of Meat for the Grinder, Season 2, our series of Necromunda Dark Uprising Battle Reports for our Dark Uprising campaign. And as you can see on this very first episode, my little sister Shade is throwing it down against me with her Helot Chaos Cult gang, the Blooded, and I am playing the Bloodmoon Hunters of the Venators. So as you can see, we're playing a show of force scenario, and they're really excited to actually get this battle report series on a roll. I'm doing a lot of different things with this battle report series to try and make it look a little bit more polished in terms of production value. I actually showed dice rolls this time around, so I'm gonna try to see how I can experiment with doing that. So tell me what you guys think. Do you like the new format or not? Do you like the way that I've done things by showing you an overview of the entirety of the battlefield? Same thing with also talking about the dice rolls are also available whenever I do a dice rolls for videos. Let me know if you like that little piece on there and how it kind of comes out, because I'm experimenting with some brand new material to see exactly how this works out. So on today, what we're actually doing is we're doing a show of force scenario. So what we're going to do is play some background music real quick. As the music is playing, I will show you photos of both gangs as well as their rosters. And I actually took individual photos of each individual fighter and put their stats and their equipment so that way you guys can see exactly what they're packing on this one as well. Now, if you want to skip past the rosters, or if there's different segments of the battle you want to see, I will put timestamps in the description box down below, so that way you can click and navigate to the part of the video that interests you the most. So that being said, let's get this battle report on a roll. Alright, so our very first campaign week, we have Bonds of Order, of course, which is call to arms, which means that every single time we recruit somebody, they only cost half as much in order to recruit them for our gang as well. And because of that, we're doing our very first scenario, which is a show of force scenario. In this scenario, I will be the defender, while my little sister Shay will be the attacker. I will actually get, my sister will get custom D3 plus 1 fighters, plus 7 fighters to actually show up on the tabletop, while I get D3 plus 5 randomly selected fighters. Now, both of our leaders must be within 6 inches of the center of the table, while the rest of the fighters must be within 12 inches inches away from the leader and 6 inches away from any other already deployed fighter as all. The whole object of the game, of course, for my opponent, my sister, to actually kill my fighters using shock and awe. She gets 1 victory point for every fighter that she manages to take out of action, 2 victory points if she does it if it's within 6 inches of another enemy fighter. My whole goal, of course, is to escape and slip back across the shadow. My objective is actually make it across the battlefield on the right hand side of the table to try to escape. If I get within 2 inches of the table edge, I manage to escape and earn a victory point. I also get a victory point for each enemy fighter I take out of action. My opponent also gets reinforcements who show up on the end phase of every turn. She gets a randomly chosen fighter who shows up at the end of the game. At the same time, we also get tactic cards on this one, and we decided to use tactics for the very first time on this channel. The tactics cards that my little sister will be using is Blackout as well as Dark Blessing, while I'll be using Grenade Bouquet as well as Blood Money for my tactics as well. The victory conditions, of course, whoever has the most victory points by the end of the battle. For rewards, the attacker earns D6 times 10 credits for every fighter they take out of action. Every fighter earns 1 point of experience who participates, and I also get a bonus experience point for each defender that manages to escape across the battlefield. The victorious gang of the scenario earns D3 reputation, and of course if any gang bottles out, they lose 1 point of reputation as well. At the same time, the attacker also earns D6 times 10 credits for their stash for each defender they take out of action, because this is the insurrection phase of the campaign. So with that being said, now that we're done with talking about the scenario rules, let's go and talk about deployments. Alright, so that takes directly to the top of the table. Turn number 1, as you can see, both our forces have now been deployed. Now it's time for us to roll off for initiative to see which of us will go first. I'm represented by the black die, my sister's by the yellow, so my sister will be taking initiative on this one. By the way, if you're wondering where that beautiful leather tray actually comes from, that's actually manufactured by a good friend of ours from M&N Leather. That's a really beautiful leather work on that dice tray. If you want to go check out that on the Instagram account, I do have it linked in my description box down below if you want to take a look at some of the beautiful leather products they have available for people. So the very first thing my sister does, of course, is play one of her tactics card, which is Blackout, which basically means you suffer -1 to hit against penalties for short range, as well as -2 to hit against at long range and beyond. And since my sister primarily has photo goggles for almost every single one of her fighters, and I don't, this actually puts her in a really good advantage, because she will be able to shoot at me at distance, while I'll have a negative modifiers in order to shoot back at her, because I'm more close combat oriented. So right off the bat, she's already doing a really good job. So for her first activation, Shade activates her leader, Yago the Thrice Cursed. He takes a basic action to aim his bolt gun and another basic action to fire it directly at my leader, Tiberius Cage. And because of that, he'll get a +1 to hit bonus when he's willing to do that attack. So as you can see in the little window down below, she managed to hit me a couple of times, as well as actually hit me with the rapid fire dice. When she does the roll for her wound, she does manage to wound me as well as to penetrate through my armor. So that part was kind of rough. So she does manage to put a flesh wound directly onto Tiberius Cage, because I do get pinned and I also have a flesh wound attached to me as well. She decides to actually activate her Flicker ability, which is one of the things she gets as a Chronomancer, which means that she gets to activate a second time. She only gets to do that once per battle, so because of that, she decides she's going to take aim once again and do the whole process and try to kill Tiberius Cage. Yago does manage to hit me a second time, as well as tries to wound me, but fails to do so because the armor saved it. So because of that, my character is perfectly fine, and that pretty much ends Shade's very first activation. So my first activation, I pick up Tiberius Cage for his basic action, so that way he can get back on his feet again. Then I do a simple action movement behind some cover, so that way he doesn't keep on getting shot at by Yago the Thrice Cursed. And that pretty much makes up my entire activation for this part. So for Shade's next activation, she activates the Murder Crow, who takes a basic action, aim her long rifle, and another basic action, open fire directly across the battlefield, directly towards Piper Kruger, my Cawdor fighter with the House Legacy rules, and she misses. So my next activation, I activate Piper Kruger, my House Cawdor Legacy Venator ganger, and what she's going to do, she's actually going to play a tactics card called Grenade Bouquet, and the reason why I'm doing that is so that way she gets 3 attacks with her bomb rats. Now I'm using frag grenades in order to do these bomb attacks. Now unfortunately what that means, of course, the hit actually automatically misses, so because of that, my bomb rats are going to scatter and they're going to go wherever they're going to go within 6 inches, so because I do have to roll 3 scatter dice in order to make that happen. So I take the 3 scatter dice, I throw them directly on the table to see where my 3 little Skaven little proxies are going to go, to see exactly how they're going to scatter across the tabletop. So because that's exactly what I decided to do. So I throw my 3 scatter dice to see exactly where they're going to end up going. As you can see, 2 of them are going to be kind of going to the bottom as well as to the left-hand side as well. Another one, however, to go straight back directly where they came from. So that part was kind of rough. So afterwards, the rats of course have scattered. I have one drop right in front of Piper Kruger, so that way I can head directly to that fighter over there on the bottom, the left-hand side. Another one drops to the left-hand side as well, so that way it can make its way directly towards another Chaos Cultist who's hiding behind that hedgehog over there. And then lastly, the very last of the rats, of course, carries back directly to the other side of the battlefield. And that pretty much makes up the scatter for these rats, and hopefully they can blow up something later on. Now, because the bomb at rats was actually a single basic action, I decided to take another basic action for Piper Kruger to open fire with her auto gun on her pole arm directly at to Chainglaive Kane, hopefully trying to take that guy down. So as you can see up here, of course, I'm going to roll my dice to see exactly what I hit. So the great part is, of course, I do throw my dice, I do manage to hit this guy 3 times, so that part was absolutely fantastic. Unfortunately, when it came to my wound dice, I just totally flubbed, so because I did not hit him or wound him, I didn't wound him at all, so that part was regrettable. However, though, I did manage to pin him, which is quite nice, so he is laying there now and trying to avoid being shot at. So for next activation, Shade does activate Zekar Telos, her Cult Witch, as well as his familiar Jetsam. They do a double movement directly all the way from the right-hand side of the battlefield, right-hand side of that little walkway, and go right behind their leader, Jago the Thrice Curse, in order to lend some support just in case if you might need it. So for my next activation, I activate Elysia Winters, my Hunter's Arm with a Long Last. She does a basic action aim with her Long Last, and because she has Infrasight, she can see, of course, in the blackout conditions, and she decides to take a pot shot directly at Jago the Thrice Curse. So as you can see here, she's going to take her shot and go for it, and as of course, she does manage to hit him, so that part was absolutely fantastic, and once again, she also does manage to wound him as well. And now normally he would take a wound, he would go down, but luckily for my sister Shade, she remembered that she does have a Chaos Familiar, which is Flotsam, so she decides to use his Omen's ability to roll the willpower test to ignore the shot. She does so because of that, Jago Thrice Curse is perfectly fine. So for my sister's next activation, she activates Venerbeal, who does a basic action aim with his hotshot last gun, another basic action open fire directly at the little bomb rat that's in front of him, just because he doesn't want to deal with that bomb rat causing problems later on. So as you can see, my sister had no problem whatsoever nailing that rat with the hotshot last gun, managed to blow it up as well, so no harm, no foul. So for my next activation, I activate Helios Hex, one of my hunters. He does use his Grapnel Launcher as a double action to move anywhere he wants within 12 inches, so I have him zip line all the way across the battlefield on top of this Connex Container, so that way he can start outflanking my enemies and start maneuvering and trying to escape. However, realized shorthand though, I did make a huge mistake because ended up that I forgot that there was a huge slave ogre on the other side of that cargo container. So my sister then activates Drak the Trench Sweeper. That's the Chaos Helot Cult who's armed with a shotgun as well as a Ceramite shield. So because he is going to take a basic action aim with his shotgun, he's going to take another basic action open fire with solid ammo directly into Helios Hex. Unfortunately for Shay, she does miss her shot, and to make matters worse, she does have to take an ammo check on top of that. So because of that, she does roll up on her ammo check, and unfortunately fails her ammo check for her character as well. So that part was quite tragic for my little sister Shade. So for my next activation, I activate my Iron Automata UR025. He does a simple action to move up forward his maximum movement allowance, and then he takes another basic action open fire with his autocannon directly at Jago the Thrice Curse. Now he does firing at a handicap because he doesn't have photo goggles, so he does suffer minus to hit against because of the pitch back conditions, and so I decided to roll my dice to see exactly what happens. Unfortunately, when I threw my dice, I totally flubbed my rolls, and to make matters worse, I also got an ammo check on that one. So I had to roll up a 6 up for my ammo check, and unfortunately, I don't make my 6 up ammo save, so now I'm completely out of ammo because it has this scarce trait attached to that autocannon. So now my Iron Automaton is just back to individual fighter, which is close combat. So because of that, my little sister then decides to activate Urgot the Dominator, her mutated slave ogre, so that thing is absolutely terrifying. She decides to actually activate to do a charge using a double action, so because of that, she does roll the die to see if she actually makes it with the movement allowance, and of course she has no problem connecting the hit. So Urgot the Dominator, of course, does charge forward and smashes directly into Helios Hex. Because he's charging, he does have additional hand weapon. He will get 5 attacks in the charge. 4 of the orange dice represent the power maul, while the yellow dice represents his horrific appendages. Unfortunately for Shade, though, she flubs her rolls and managed only to hit me once with the power maul, so that part was an absolute miracle, all things considered. So our 1 power maul attack does manage to hit me as well as to wound me as well, but luckily for me, when I rolled for my ammo roll, for my armor roll against that, I actually managed to pass my armor roll, so because of that, Helios Hex is perfectly fine and remains unscathed. So I do try to attack back with my twin auto pistols. Unfortunately, I flubbed my rolls, so I do manage him once, but I failed to wound him, so because of that, he is perfectly fine. So Urgot the Dominator as well as Helios Hex are now stuck in close combat with one another. And for my very last activation, I activate Endithor Onyx Blade, who's my champion. I have him do a double movement forward, moving up his maximum allowance of 8 inches to partner up right next to my leader, Tiberius Cage. So that way he can also take cover behind that barrel and to protect him in case anyone attacks him in close combat. So for Shay's next activation, she activates Yaros, the Bullet Farmer, one of her Helot Chaos Cultists, who takes a basic action aim with his auto gun and another basic action open fire on that second bomb rat just to try to get rid of it. And as you can see, she had no problem hitting that bomb rat and also causing it to explode, erupting into a ball of flame and managed to kill another bomb rat. My sister Shay then activates Chain Glaive Kane, since he's been pinned before, managed to take a basic action, put him on his feet so that way he can stand up and move out. And she has him take another basic action to move real quick across the battlefield directly beneath Piper Kruger, taking cover beneath her so that way she can't shoot at him. So for Shay's next activation, she activates Screaming Koth. It's her cult disciple whose arm with a grenade launcher's got both frag and crack grenades. She takes a basic action, aim with a crack grenade, and actually takes another basic action, open fire with it, so that way she gets +1 to hit because Piper Kruger, of course, is behind partial cover. Not only does he manage to hit Piper Kruger, he also managed to put injuries on her as well, cutting right through her armor save. So because she does take 2 damage, and we have to roll injury dice to see exactly what ends up happening to her. Unfortunately for my hunter, she does sustain 2 serious injuries, so because she does go down with additional flesh wound on top of that, at the same time my sister also gains experience points for her cult disciple as well, so that part was horrible. So for the rest of my little sister's activation, she then activates Core the Reaper, which is her cult disciple owned with the plasma gun. So because she decides to activate him and actually move up forward his maximum moon allowance, he does a move action directly behind those Hesco barriers, heading their way directly towards Piper Kruger, and that pretty much makes up the action phase for turn number 1. So with the action phase over with, we go directly to the bottom of the turn with the end phase, and the first thing I gotta do, of course, is to take a bottle test. So it takes us directly to the end phase, and the first thing I do, of course, is I take a bottle test. Lucky for me, though, I do pass my bottle test, so none of my fighters do have to run off the battlefield, so I got pretty lucky there. However, when it came to Piper's injury roll, of course, unfortunately I rolled an out of action results because I did have to roll on the lasting injury table, and unfortunately I rolled a 42, which means she suffers a grievous injury, which will become when she goes into convalescence, so she'll miss out her next battle report. So that part was super tragic, and my very first loss for the battle report so far. So that being said, that takes directly to the end of turn number 1, and this is an overhead shot of the entirety of the battlefield as the battle is over. As you can see, I'm slowly trying to make my way through the center of the battlefield. I'm being blunted on the flanks, however. On the top of the table, I'm being stopped by my little sister's fire team, as well as the bottom of the table as well, and my guys in the center, of course, are just struggling to just get past the midsection point so that we can make it to the other side of the table and to escape as well. So with the end phase over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 2. Alright, so that takes directly to the top of turn number 2, and both my sister and I both roll off for a party to see which of us will going first. So top of turn number 2, I will begin the initiative on this one, so because of that I am looking for some vengeance to get back at the Chaos Cultists and the things that they've done to my gang up to this point. I still have a lot of work still going my way because I gotta go through all these Chaos Cults to get to this side of the table, but I think I'm up for the challenge. So for my very first activation, I activate Helios Hex. I do a double action to use his grapnel launcher to get him out of trouble. He travels 12 inches, rocketing all the way to the top of that red cargo container, so that way he can break away and try to escape as quickly as possible, so that way he can earn himself some experience points and hopefully help me win the battle with some victory points as well. So for my sister's first activation, she activates Drock, the Trench Sweeper, her Chaos Helot Cultist, who's armed with a Ceramite shield as well as a shotgun. Now his shotgun's out of ammo for Solid Slug, so because as she switches over to his auto pistol, has a simple action for him to turn around and another simple basic action open fire with his auto pistol directly into my character as well. So Shade opens fire with her auto pistol directly into Helios Hex, does manage to hit him but fails to wound him, so because of that I managed to pass my armor save, so no harm, no foul there. But I do have to take an initiative test because I'm so close to the edge. Unfortunate for me though, I do fail my initiative test because I do go plummeting to the ground like a meteor hitting the cold hard concrete. And to make matters worse, I also fall, get wounded, and I suffer a flesh wound as well, so that part was absolutely terrible. So right now, Helios Hex is in a horrible position because he's completely surrounded by enemies, so things will not be looking too good for him at this point. So for my next activation, I activate Alicia Winters, which is one of my hunters. She takes a basic action aim once again with her long last, using her infrared sight to aim directly at Jaeger the Thrice Curse, and she's going to take a shot at him and try to snipe him from a distance as well. So Alicia Winters does manage to hit him and actually managed to wound him as well, so that part was absolutely fantastic. He actually failed his armor save on that one. But because Shay does have a Chaos Familiar with Flotsam being attached to Jaeger the Thrice Curse, he's able to take a willpower test to see if he actually ignores it, and of course he successfully manages to ignore that hit, so he is perfectly fine, no harm, no foul. He will need to take an initiative test though to see if he falls, and we're going to talk about that next. So Shade rolls for his initiative. Of course, he has no problem staying on top of that little platform. So because of that, he's just laying down right now, and he is currently pinned. So unfortunately, my great evil dastardly plan to snipe this character came to no good. So for Shade's next activation, she activates Urgot the Dominator, her mutated Ogryn. So instead of actually having him chasing down Helios Hex, decides to actually send this guy, like Wrecking Ball that he is, to go directly towards my main body of my forces. So she does a quick double movement across the entirety of the battlefield, right past Mill 7, which is our beautiful corpse grinder, which you guys have seen on our channel before, being featured on one of our hobby side episodes, which is a beautiful piece of terrain that was created by Iron Major, and it fits perfectly within this campaign setting because we're doing a Dark Uprising campaign, which is really beautiful as well. But anyways, Urgot the Dominator, of course, goes stomping directly towards my main body, so that's a huge hulk of mutated flesh that I gotta deal with. So for my next activation, I activate my leader, Tiberius Cage. I decide to move him his normal moon allowance across the battlefield right next to that hedgehog, so that way he can face off and square up against Urgot the Dominator, because I do have a melt-a-gun, and he's perfect range for short-range attacks to just melt his face. So I'm really looking forward to actually getting that accomplished against my opponent. So the first thing I do, of course, is to roll to hit on this part. The only thing I do is not roll a 1. I'll be perfectly fine. So I do manage to hit this guy, so that's not a problem whatsoever. Now I do, of course, have to roll to wound him. And the nice thing about that part, of course, I have no problem wounding this guy whatsoever. And because of the Melta rules, he automatically goes out of action because he eats up all of his wounds. So when I roll for his lasting injury, of course, he rolls a 36, which is a grievous injury. So because of that, he will go into convalescence, and he will miss his next battle report as he's recovering from his injuries. So that part was absolutely fantastic. So just like that, Urgot the Dominator is dominating no one anymore because he is now currently dead and fried from my crispy melt-a-guns, which is absolutely fantastic. Also net myself some really large amount of experience points for that too, for my leader, which is all kinds of fun. So for Shade's next activation, she does activate the Murder Crow, and she does decide to use her blessings from Sneech, where she, once per round, she can ignore all negative modifiers for shooting actions. So because that, she just takes a straight up shot directly, using her long rifle to go directly against Alicia Winters, my hunter, who's all the way across on the other side of the table. She gets +1 to hit, especially with the infrasight and her long rifle, has no problem making that hit whatsoever, and when she rolls to wound, of course, she does manage to wound my character as well. Luckily for me, I do have armor, so because I do take an armor save on that part, manage to pass the armor save no problem, so because Alicia Winters is perfectly fine. So Alicia Winters does get hit. Luckily for me though, she doesn't get wounded, she only gets pinned, but because I'm so close to the edge, that little overhang right over there, she does have the taste of nature test to see if she falls off and actually hits the ground or not. And unfortunately, disaster strikes. I do fail my initiative test, so because of that, Alicia Winters does go falling to the ground like a comet. And to make matters worse, she does get wounded, which is absolutely horrible. And I don't pass my armor save either. And when it comes to the injury, she actually suffers a serious injury, so she is currently laying on the ground and bleeding and open and vulnerable to the world for anyone to come and basically just put her out with the coup de grace. So she's in a really bad spot. So for my next activation, activate Into Thor Onyx Blade because he needs to be able to protect Alicia Winters from being attacked by Chainglaive Cain. So I decided to move up directly to that position so that way he can take aim and open fire with his auto pistol directly into Chainglaive Cain to prevent him from going to Alicia Winters. And that's exactly what I decided to do next. So I roll off, and I do manage to get 3 shots on him, but unfortunately my shots are horrible because I only have, Ballistic Skill 5, so because of that my shots totally miss, and that part is super tragic because now Alicia Winters is vulnerable from being charged at by Chainglaive Cain. So for Shade's next turn, she decides to activate Chainglaive Cain and actually rolls a charge, and so because I managed to get a perfect 3 on that, makes him 8 inches directly into Alicia Winters, so that part is absolutely horrible. So Chainglaive Cain managed to go directly into Alicia Winters, managed to put her out of action with a coup de grace and also put her a grievous injury onto her. So because of that, she will miss out her next battle report as she is in convalescence as well. And at the same time, earning some juicy experience points for Chainglaive Cain as well. So that part was kind of sad. So for Shade's next activation, because she's a little afraid that my guys are going to go after her leader, she decides to take a simple action and move up Zekratilos directly closer towards her leader Yago the Thrice Curse, and because of that she decides to use her psychic abilities in order to get the Dark Shield ability off. Dark Shield is a telekinetic ability that gives +1 armor saves to both the witch and everybody within 3 inches of her, so because that Zekratilos managed to successfully get that power off, so because that both Yago the Thrice Curse as well as Zekratilos both have +1 to their armor saves, so it makes it a little bit more survivable from being attacked. From there, for my next activation, activate UR025. I just basically do a move action to move him rapidly across the battlefield as quickly as he can, so that way he can close the distance and try to make his way directly to the exit port across the other side of the battlefield. So for Shade's next activation, she activates Inigo. Now I forgot to mention this before, I do apologize. It's been a while since I shot Necromunda Battle Reports, but during the end phase, she did manage to get the last member of her gang to show up on the tabletop. He's fighter number 10, his name is Inigo. He's just packing a normal hotshot last gun, and he actually showed up at the end phase in turn number 1 because of reinforcements, so I do apologize for missing that. So anyways, so my sister Shade decides to activate this character, takes a basic action aim with his hotshot last gun, and another basic action open fire directly into Helios Hex. So she gets a beautiful shot off with her hotshot last gun directly into Helios Hex, and at the same time also manages to wound him as well. So that part was horrible. I do try to take an armor save, but unfortunately for me though, I just couldn't get my armor save off, especially that -1 to hit with AP on that hotshot last gun. So because I do suffer another flesh wound, so Helios Hex now is really easy to wound. He's only toughness 1. If I get one more flesh wound, my character is going to go out of action. So that would prove to be horrific. Sade then activates Core the Reaper next, who's the champion armed with a plasma gun, takes a basic action aim and another basic action open fire with his plasma gun against Endithor Onyx Blade. Unfortunately for her though, even though she got 3 shots, she completely missed. Shade goes next and activates Screaming Koth, who moves up and fires with a crack grenade directly towards Endithor Onyx Blade. So she basically opens fire with that grenade and tries to hit him with that high strength attack. Unfortunately for her though, she did miss her attack, so because of that, no harm, no foul, and it pretty much ends that activation. Shade then activates Yaros the Bullet Farmer, does a simple action mode next to that Hesco Berry, and a basic action open fire with his autogun directly towards Endithor Onyx Blade. Now she does manage to hit him, and she also manages to hit him pretty good, but unfortunately for her though, she did run an ammo check on that part, so she did have to re-roll for her ammo check, did manage to reload her gun, but she failed to wound my character, so because of that, Endithor Onyx Blade is perfectly fine, and he's just currently pinned. She then activates her Helot Cult as Venerbeal is his name, so he does move up directly towards a Hesco barrier right next to the rest of the fighters as well. She does try to open fire with that character directly towards Endithor as well as Tiberius Cage, but unfortunately for those, she missed her shots, so nothing much really happened there. Shade then activates Iago Thrice Curse, who does get back on his feet again with a basic action, takes another basic action to open fire with his bolt gun directly into UR025, my armored automata. Does manage to hit him actually once, because it does hit him, and it also manages to wound him as well, so that part was absolutely insane. When it came to my armor save, of course, I was unable to get any armor save, so because of that, I do take a damage for that. Now, unfortunately, I put the wrong number on there. As you can see in that, I put a red die, which is 1. It actually should be 2 wounds because it is a bolt gun, so I do apologize for that mistake. Like I said, it's been a while since any of my friends and I have played Necromunda, so we're going to make some rule errors in this first battle report. Alright, so that takes directly to the bottom of turn number 2 during the end phase. And the first thing I do, of course, is take a bottle test. So I take a d6, of course, and I roll it, adding all of my various factors. Luckily for me, I do pass my bottle test, so I don't have to worry about losing reputation or taking cool tests to stick around. And as you can see from this photo, there's a lot of death and destruction taking place on this tabletop. Unfortunately, I'm just being slowly having to make my way, grinding across the battlefield as slowly as I can to try and make it to the other side so that way I can escape. Meanwhile, my sister's doing a beautiful job surrounding me on the left flank, on the top of the table as well as the bottom of the table. I have my work cut out for me. So with that, we go directly to the top of turn number 3, and the first thing we gotta do, of course, is figure out who has priority. So both Shade and I both roll off for initiative to see which of us will be going first. I managed to win the priority on this one, so because of that, turn 3 goes off with the Venators. And so because of that, I make my very first activations. So for my very first activation, I activate Tiberius Cage. I'm also going to do a group activation with the rest of my fighters as well. So Tiberius Cage is actually going to spend a simple action moving up forward, so that way he's within good shooting range directly towards my sister's leader, Iago Thrice Curse. But yeah, I got to put back the train. I do apologize about that. I do have chubby hands. So I do move up my normal moon allowance, so that way within the short range distance of my melted gun, and then I open fire directly on Iago Thrice Cursed. So Tiberius does open up with his melted gun, which he's in the short distance for, so because I do roll to hit him, and luckily for me I do manage to hit him no problem, not a problem at all. And I also managed to wound him too, which is absolutely fantastic, and take his wounds all the way down to 0. Now because of that, he does automatically go out of action, so because of that, when I roll to see exactly what ends up happening for his injuries, I just basically take 2d6 and I roll it, and I basically get an out cold result is what I get for that guy. So because he does no longer participate in the rest of the battle, but he will make a full recovery, no problem. Now of course my little sister Shade did have to take a willpower test to see if he could actually survive not getting shot at, but unfortunately when she rolled her dice though, she rolled a 4, so because he does suffer the injuries from that weapon, and the thing she's got to do now is take a cool test for her champion, or witch, Zekar Telos, to see if he actually sticks around, and unfortunately for him, he does not. So because of that, Zekertilos, he decides that it's probably better just to survive and live to fight another day. So because he does flee away from that, I think he goes like 5 or 6 inches, I believe, and of course he is currently broken. So during the end phase, he will have to take a nerve test to see if he does rally. So for the rest of my activations, I activate UR025, my Iron Automata. He gets up on his feet and just moves up his normal moon allowance, so that way he can make his way across the battlefield as quickly as possible. I do exactly the same thing with Enderthor Onyx Blade. He spends a simple action to get back on his feet again, and another simple action is make up a normal moon allowance, so that way he can try to escape the tabletop as quickly as they can. So for Shade's next activation, she decides to activate Drake, the Trench Sweeper, which is the guy armed with a shotgun. She decides to actually make a charge action directly against Helios Hex. So she basically rolls a d6 to see if she can actually make it to make that charge distance, and she has no problem making that charge distance whatsoever. So Druk, the Trench Sweeper, does go charging into Helios Hex, does manage to hit him once as well, and when he actually sees the CV actually wounds him, he does manage to wound my fighter as well. So because I do take an armor save, and luckily for me though, my armor save does manage to protect me, so I'm perfectly fine, and that allows me to return up with attacks of my own. I attack back with 2 attacks because I have 2 auto pistols at exactly the same time, so when I do try to shoot him, I do manage to hit him once, and I do manage to wound him once as well. But unfortunately for me though, my opponent does have that Ceramite shield, so when she rolls to protect herself, she gets that beautiful armor save, so she's perfectly fine, so no harm, no foul, and both are just kind of staring at each other, unsure of what to do next. So for my next activation, activate Helios Hex. I use this grapple launcher again for a double action to rocket 12 inches across the battlefield, which brings directly to the battlefield edge, and because that Helios Hex manages to escape and earn a victory point as well as experience. So Shade goes next by activating Core the Reaper as well as Vestibule as well. They both take basic actions to aim and open fire with their plasma gun as well as their hotshot last gun directly at my leader Tiberius Cage. So up first is Core the Reaper. He decides to take aim with his plasma gun, open fire with it, and he goes directly into my leader. Manages to hit me as well as get an ammo roll as well, so that part was kind of rough for him. Now he does try to wound me of course, but luckily for me though, I do manage to survive all my wounds, so I'm perfectly fine on that part. So the only thing happening is that Tiberius Cage just gets pinned momentarily, so he's perfectly fine. Up next is Venators with his hotshot last gun, and unfortunately for my little sister Shade though, she does manage to miss her shot and also gets an ammo check as well. So when she checks her ammo check, she does fail it, so because that her character is currently out of ammo right now, has to reload later. And because Shade has all the activations this turn, she has Yoros, the Bullet Farmer, open fire with his auto gun. So because he does open fire with that weapon directly into me as well, manages to wound me too, and managed to hit me at one time as well. So that part was kind of rough. And so because it does take an ammo check, does manage to pass an ammo check, no problem. I do pass my armor save, so everything is all good. So the rest of the turn is actually pretty boring because she's just moving fighters around. She first starts off with her champion Screaming Koth. That's the champion's arm with the grenade launcher. He does a double movement to move up the ladder and to go directly on the top of that platform, so that hopefully for his next turn he can open fire with his grenade launcher directly into my fighters. Shade then activates the Murder Crow, who basically does a double movement away from the top of the water well from that tower, walk across the walkway there directly onto the fuel tanks as well, joining up with the rest of the gang, moving up with 2 simple movements, so that way she can try to close a distance and try to engage the enemy as quickly as possible. And for her last activation, she activates Iago. So Inigo basically just kind of does a double move as well, moving up directly to the top of that green cargo container and getting a good sniper position to cover anybody coming down that walkway near those jersey barriers to stop them from escaping. And that pretty much makes up Shade's turn for this one. So that takes regularly the end phase. As you can see, this is the overhead shot of the entirety of the battlefield. I am slowly inching my way across it, trying to escape this battlefield as quickly as I can. The first thing I gotta do, of course, is take a battle test. Luckily for me, though, I do pass with flying colors, so nobody has to take cool tests this turn. But if I take any more injuries, I do not think that's going to be the case very longer, so I do have to watch out for that. So during the end phase, my sister Shade does take a cool test for Zekertilos, her witch, who's a member of her gang. So she managed to pass that cool test, no problem. So he does manage to get his nerve back, and at the same time also gets +1 experience points for his troubles as well. And that pretty much makes up turn number 3 for this battle report. Alright, so that takes us right to the top of turn number 4. Both Shade and I roll for prior to see which of us will going first, and of course the Chaos Helot Cultist managed to secure it. So because of that, my sister will be going next, and the Blooded will have priority in turn number 4. So the very first activation, my sister activates Chainglaive Kane. Her Helot Chaos Cult's arm with the Chainglaive declares a charge directly against my character Tiberius Cage. Because he's got the 2-inch versatile trait on his weapon, she moves up forward in order to strike back with her Chainglaive weapon. And as you can see when it comes to the attacks on that one, does manage to hit my character pretty good on that one. Luckily for me though, I was able to actually armor save against it, so because of that I am perfectly fine. Now when it comes back to my reaction attacks, of course, I do have a stub gun, so I decided to use that to go back against him. I do manage to hit him pretty good. At the same time managed to get through his armor, and at the same time managed to put a flesh wound on him. So that part was absolutely fantastic. So because of that was my sister's first activation, I'm going to go next, and I'm going to activate Tiberius Cage. So for my very first activation of turn number 4, I activate my leader Tiberius Cage, who takes his melta gun and opens fire directly onto Chain Glaive Kane. And the great part about that, because he's so close, he's automatically within a short distance. I get bonuses to hit against him, and at the same time, I also get bonuses to damage against him. I have no problem hitting him, and I do roll up an ammo save on that one, so that part was kind of rough. But luckily for me, though, I do pass my ammo check, so everything is fine. I do wound him as well. Now, to make matters worse, of course, because my opponent is within short range, I used up all of his health, took all of his wounds away. He does have to roll up on the serious injury table with automatically going out of action, and he rolls double snake eyes in that part. Lessons learned. And the crazy part is my little sister Shade rolled a 3 on this one, so Chain Glaive Kane gets 3 additional experience points, and he learns the hard way why I never go up against somebody who's armed with a melta gun. So for the second half of Tiberius Cage's activation, he does do a grep activation for the rest of his fighters. So now I murked that fool, I decided to actually move up my normal movement allowance directly towards the fuel tanks, so that way I can make my way directly to the exit. I did exactly the same thing with my Iron Automaton UR025, making move forward, moving up his maximum movement allowance to try to escape. And I do exactly the same thing with Indithor Onyx Blade, my champion as well, just because I'm trying to get out this tabletop as quickly as possible. I am stacking up some kills, but my goal here is to pretty much escape and to win the battle that way. So that pretty much makes up my group activation for this turn. So because I only have so few fighters left on the tabletop, the rest of the turn is dedicated to my little sister Shade. She does activate Drac the Trench Sweeper, so because of that guy does move up forward directly between those cargo containers. He takes a cover position right behind those cargo containers over there as well, and he does another simple action to auto reload his shotgun to pass his ammo roll, so that way he's got more solid slugs as well. So he's ready to rock and roll and ready to cause any problems for anybody who runs past him in those jersey barriers. My sister then, of course, activates Core the Reaper, as well as Venerbill, as well as Yaros the Bullet Farmer. All 3 of those guys do try to take crack shots directly at Tiberius Cage. Unfortunately for my sister, though, she does manage to hit my character with, I believe Yaros is the only guy who managed to hit me. But because of that, I do get pinned, but other than that, though, not much really happened for the most part. So that part was kind of tragic for my sister. She put all that firepower in there only just to get a pin result, so that part was kind of demoralizing. So for the rest of my sister's turn, it's pretty much lackluster. Nigo does try to take a pot shot directly against UR025, but unfortunately for those, she misses her shot. So because of that, he's perfectly fine. Meanwhile, she does activate Zekar Telos, her cult witch, who does basically a basic action get Dark Shield to give his increased armor save by +1. He also tries to take a basic action open fire with his auto pistol, but unfortunately for my sister, she missed her shot against UR025. So because of that, my Iron Automata is perfectly fine. After that, of course, Screaming Koth, which is the champion of the grenade launcher, does a double action to move across the gantry walkway, making his way directly to the bridge to lend some support with his grenade launcher. The Murder Crow also does 2 simple movements with a move action across the bridge directly back to the tower over there, so that way he can get a good sniper position with his long rifle. And lastly, Yaros the Bullet Farmer does move up twice, moving up directly across the battlefield, doing a move directly towards the bottom of the table as well. I do apologize. I thought it was Yaros the Bullet Farmer that actually shot at my leader Tiberius Cage, but it actually wasn't him. It was actually the Venerbill, which is the guy armed with the hotshot lasgun, who hit my boss and also managed to pin him as well. And that pretty much makes up my sister's rest of her turn activation for turn number 4. So with that takes directly the end phase of turn number 4. The very first thing I do, of course, I have to take a bottle test because of my losses I took from my gang. So I take a d6 and I roll it against the table there. And unfortunately, I do fail my bottle test. So I am going to lose a point of reputation, which is not that great. And at the same time, all my fighters do need to take cool tests to see if they actually flee the battlefield. So the end phase is pretty lackluster. So we go directly to the top of turn number 5 and we roll off for a priority to see which of us will be going first. So we go directly to the top of turn number 5, we roll for a priority. I imagine when the roll off on that one, so turn 5, I will get the very first activation, so I got priority this time around. At the same time, I also have to take cool tests for my fighters because we did bottle to see if they actually flee the battlefield or if they stick around and fight. So with my group activation with my character in Onyx Blade Indithor, I decided to actually have to take a cool test for all my characters. They all pass. So Onyx Indithor actually activates UR025, who does a move action directly at the end of the battlefield, manages to escape off the tabletop edge, so he's fine, and Indithor, of course, does a double movement as well, making his way directly towards the edge of the tabletop as well. Now my sister Nigo does activate. Nigo tries to peck a pot shot at my fighters, but unfortunately she fails to do so. So for my next activation, I activate Tiberius Cage. He manages to get back on his feet again real quick, and he makes a simple action to move forward to catch up for the rest of his gang, and then he opens up with his melta gun directly against Inigo as well. I'm sorry, I did forget to take a picture of Inigo trying to take a shot at my characters, but I think it's because I didn't do it because he missed. So Tiberius Cage opens up with his melted gun directly on Inigo. I do manage to hit that guy, but I do roll an ammo roll as well. When I roll for my ammo check, unfortunately I rolled a 1, so because I am out of ammo for the rest of the battle. However, though, I do manage to take a roll off against my opponent, and I have no problem, of course, wounding that guy as well with all 3 damage, going right through his armor and taking him down to 0 wounds. When I roll for injuries, he does go out of action, and at the same time, he also suffers grievous injuries, so because of that, he will be out for the rest of the battle report, as well as miss his next battle due to being in recovery because he is in convalescence, so that part was quite tragic. So for my sister Shade's next activation, she activates Trake, the Trench Sweeper, who does a basic action aim with a shotgun, another basic action to fire with a solid slug shot directly into Tiberius Cage. He gets a +1 to hit with the shotgun blast, of course. He does manage to hit my gang leader, but unfortunately for her, though, my sister Shade was unable to wound him, so because of that, Tiberius Cage is pinned instead. So he's just currently laying on the ground, trying to take cover so that way he doesn't get shot anymore. So for the rest of the round, it's dedicated to my sister Shay because she's the only one who's got fighters left on the tabletop. So she activates Zekar Telos first, uses a basic action to trigger the Dark Shield weird ability on her character to give him +1 to his armor save. And for her second basic action, she opens fire with her auto pistol directly to Endethor Onyx Blade. Unfortunately for her, though, she does miss her shot, so because of that, nothing much happens there. She also takes a huge risk by activating Screaming Koth, her disciple arm with a grenade launcher. Decides to actually take a risk to try to jump off the ledge there and take an initiative tech to land on the ground for her first basic action so that way she can open fire with a grenade launcher. In pure dramatic fashion, Screaming Koth does manage to stick the landing, so he's perfectly fine. He opens up with a grenade launcher with crack grenades, but unfortunately for her, though, she does miss her shot, so it strays off and doesn't even hit Endethor Onyx Blade. So even though there's some really cool acrobatics involved, nothing much really happened there. So for the rest of her turn, she activates Core, the Reaper, as well as Venerbeal. They do a group activation. They both do simple movements twice to move across the tabletop, to move 10 inches, to move as quick as they can to try to intercept the rest of my gang trying to escape. The Murder Crow does a double action to get down from the top of the crow's nest directly to the bottom of the well, so that way they can open fire with their long last in the next turn if they're able to. And Yaros, the Bullet Farmer, the last of my sister's Helot Chaos Cultist, does a simple action to move up forward and a basic action open fire with his auto gun directly at Endethor Onyx Blade. But unfortunately for my sister Shade, though, she missed her shot, so nothing much came of it. And that pretty much makes up turn number 5 for this battle report. So that takes directly to the end phase. As you can see, I only got 2 fighters left on the tabletop. I'm so close to actually fleeing the tabletop. I'm almost tasting the victory on this one. At the same time, my sister is swarming around me on all sides to try to fight me, so things are definitely taking a desperate turn. So that being said, we go directly to the top of turn number 6, and both Shade and I roll off for initiative to see which of us has priority. So that takes us directly to the top of turn number 6. Both Shade and I roll off for initiative to see which of us will be going first, and I managed to win the priority on this one. So the very first thing I got to do, of course, is take cool tests for each one of my fighters to see if any of them stick around, because unfortunately I bottled in the earlier turn. Unfortunately for me, Tiberius Cage does fail his bottle test for this cool test, so because that he does run off the battlefield, Endethor Onyx Blade, however, does pass his cool test, so I get to activate first, and we'll talk about exactly what happened to him next. So unfortunately, Tiberius Cage does flee the battlefield because he fails his cool test. However, Endethor Onyx Blade does a double move directly to the edge of the table and managed to escape as well. So because of that, he escapes, earn myself a victory point, and that pretty much ends up this battle report for battle report number 1. So with that, this pretty much brings up this battle report for battle report number 1 for our Dark Uprising campaign, Meet for the Grinder Season 2. We'll be right back here in a second. We're going to go directly to the post game because this battle report is now officially over.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
All right, now it's time for the post game. The first group we're going to talk about are the Blooded. Played by my sister Shade. This is her Helot Chaos Cult that is dedicated to Sneech. So let's go on and talk about exactly what ended up happening for these guys. Unfortunately for my sister Shade, she did lose the battle report. She managed to score 3 victory points while I was able to score 7 victory points. So first of all, let's go on and talk about injuries real quick. So first of all, let's talk about Jago the Thrice Cursed. Now, I know this is a different looking miniature, and that's because we took these photos before we actually did their battle report. We didn't get time to retake those photos, so I do apologize for that. But Jago the Thrice Cursed, though, he get it out cold, so because he does make a full recovery, so no harm, no foul, he lives on to fight for another day. Chain Glaive Kane, however, did level up because of his Lessons Learned ability, and because he gets +1 to his movement as well. It also increases his credit value by 10 credits as well, so that part is kind of nice. He is, of course, going to miss out his next battle report because he is in recovery, because he did suffer Lessons Learned, but Chain Glaive Kane also improved his fight as well, so that part is pretty cool. As for Inigo, which is the fight on the left-hand side there with the last gun, he does manage to suffer a grievous injury as well, so he is in recovery, so he will miss out on his next battle report. And Urgot the Dominator also suffers a grievous injury as well, so he will also be in recovery, and he will miss his next battle report as well for that character. So that pretty much makes up all the injuries for my sister's gang on this one. And as a post-battle action sequence, my sister does do the Dark Ritual for Helot Chaos Cult, and Core the Reaper is randomly selected to be the vessel for the change. He does survive the ritual as well, so he gets +4 to his experience points. My sister did lose 1 point for the test because she did lose the battle, but she gets +2 to her roll because she already has the favor as Niche and manages to pass the Dark Ritual ability. So because of that, she still retains as Niche's favor, so she still has all the bonuses that all basically contains for that part. From her territories, as well as from the trading post, she managed to recruit a brand new Helot Chaos cultist named Sulaco, who is pictured here, as you can see here, as well as earn 20 credits from that. She also gets 3 reputation points from her Hab level territory, as well as earning 60 credits from that territory, as well as 60 credits from the wall post outpost territory that she has as well. So for the trading post, she gets 140 credits from her territories, as well as 60 credits for taking out both Elysia Winters as well as Piper Kruger during the scenario, giving her 200 credits in total. With her 200 credits, she's managed to spend 50 of it to recruit a brand new rogue doc named the Good Doctor, so because he is now added to the gang as well. And at the same time, she also spends 105 credits to purchase mesh armor, auto gun with auto pistol, frag grenades, as well as photo goggles for Sulaco. She takes her 45 remaining credits and places it directly into the stash. In the end, she was able to score 3 points reputation from her territories, which gives her a grand total of 4 reputation in total. Her gang's new record now is at 0 wins as well as 1 loss, and her new gang rank now is at 2,205 points. Alright, so let's go on and talk about my gang, the Bloodmoon Hunters, which is my Venator gang for this one. So let's go on and talk about exactly what happened for the post game. I was able to score a victory on this one because I managed to score 7 victory points in combination with my guys escaping off the tabletop, as well as putting enemy fighters out of actions. So first of all, let's go on and talk about my injuries real quick. So unfortunately, I did lose 2 fighters in this battle report. Elysia Winters suffered a grievous injury, so because of that, she does go into recovery, so she will miss out on her next battle report, which is kind of tragic. And the second fighter I lost was Piper Kruger. She also suffered a partially deafened injury as well. So her very first partially deafened injury, she doesn't actually suffer any handicaps for that part. However, she does suffer a second one. It will affect her leadership characteristics, so that part is kind of sad. And at the same time, because she is partially deafened, she is also in recovery as well, so she will miss out on her next battle report also. However, there is a bit of good news. My leader, Tiberius Cage, managed to score a bunch of experience points for all the fighters he took out of action, so because of that, he was able to level up. And I decided for this character to choose the Nerves of Steel skill. And the reason why I chose that was because he kept on getting shot at all the time, and he kept on getting pinned. So in order to make sure that doesn't happen, I gave him Nerves of Steel so that way he can just pass a cool test and be able to skip pinning on his next activation. So that's pretty much the idea for that character. And at the same time, it also increased his credit rating by 20 credits. For my territories, for my settlement territory, I was able to recruit a new hunter named Apollyon Shivers is his character's name. I basically, when we rolled it for that guy because he was randomly chosen, whenever we do that for Venators, we just roll a d4 to figure out which characteristics he got. So he got the first set of characteristics, which is the versatile trait, so that's kind of nice. He also came with 25 credits, so I decided to buy a power knife for this guy when he came into my gang. My settlement also raised 30 credits as well. Now for my Underhide Shrine, I was able to get a blessing off on Crag Orc Slayer, which is one of my champions. He'll get +1 to his armor save until the next campaign cycle, so that part's kind of nice. And he also gets 10 credits added for my stash from that territory. For my manufactorium level, I was able to spend 30 credits to get any weapons or wear gear for free, so I decided to get a shotgun with solid and scatter ammo, and I put that in the stash to give that to Apollyon Shivers later on. I was able to also score 40 credits from that territory as well. And because I won this scenario, I was able to get a brand new territory, which was Slave Pits. So I rolled off to see if all my fighters, they roll a 6, they get 3 additional experience point, and Clint Tombstone and Apollyon Shivers both get 3 experience points right off the bat from the Slave Pits, so that part was kind of nice. And also managed to score 60 credits from that territory as well. So for the training post, I was able to score 140 credits from my territories. I spent 105 credits for bolt gun, as well as photo goggles, as well as mesh armor for Apollyon Shivers, my brand new hunter, so that way he's fully kitted out. I gave him a bolt gun so that way he could do some long range shooting, and a shotgun as a backup weapon in case he runs out of ammo for his bolt gun. I also spent my remaining 35 credits for purchase photo goggles for Tiberius Cage, so that way he can shoot at all visibility conditions as well. So in the end, I was able to score 3 reputation points from both from this scenario. I do lose 1 for bottling out though, so that does increase my reputation to 3 points in total. My current record now is at 1 win as well as 0 losses, and at the same time, my new gang right now is at 2,265 points. So that's good news, you guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. I definitely want to hear your guys' input about the new format that I have on this channel. Tell me what you think of the new format that I have, with including the dice rolls and doing my voiceovers and stuff. Do you enjoy that? Let me know in the comments box down down below, because if you guys do like that, I'll just keep on adding it to future battle reports. As always, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the greatest hobby news related to this channel. That's good for this, guys. We will catch you guys on the next battle report. Peace out and stay classy.